Hey guys! So I lied a little bit. I am back with one more talking to you video before Horror Nights, and that's because today Jeff, or the K-pop nerd on Twitter and YouTube, he came up with the great idea to create a Horror Nights tag. And since we are all currently obsessed with Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando, I have to do this tag. So this is something that he and Brittany and I kind of collaborated on today, and it is storming tonight. It has been storming all afternoon, so I normally have to kind of sit right up against my window to get light as it is, and now it's been storming. So I apologize for the low lighting situation. Whenever I hold up my iPad, it's gonna do this. So what we've got are 25 Halloween Horror Nights questions in honor of the 25th year of Halloween Horror Nights. And it runs the gamut from houses to scare zones, all kinds of questions like that. So let's get to it because I have a feeling this is going to be a long video as it is. So the first question is, what was your first year attending Halloween Horror Nights? And for me, that was in 2001. Way back in the day. I was 16 and in high school and happened to be in Orlando for a Florida Scholastic Press Association meeting. And somehow we convinced our sponsors to let us go to Halloween Horror Nights. I have no idea how we convinced them of that, but we did. And I'm a giant chicken, but because these other kids were going and I didn't really know them yet, but we were bonding, I went. I didn't go in any haunted houses. I only did scare zones, and we rode Jaws and Earthquake and Men in Black, but I didn't do any houses that year. I stood outside one of the run houses, but I didn't go in it. What was your first house? My first house was Psycho in 2006. And that's not to say that I didn't go to Halloween Horror Nights between 2001 and 2006. I actually went in 2001, 2003, 2004, 2005. It took until 2006 for me to finally go in a house, because I was a giant chicken. So yeah, my first house was Psycho, and I actually really liked it. It was a tent house and definitely set the bar for me on what Halloween Horror Nights was going to be. There were some really cool scenes in that house. I distinctly remember walking through a hallway full of like mothers' dresses and just being super freaked out, waiting for someone to like grab me. It didn't happen, but it was really scary. And then the finale scene in that house was awesome because it was like all shower curtains and strobe lights and Norman Bates coming at you with knives. It was a good house. Number 3, what was your favorite year? I think, like most Halloween Horror Nights fans, my favorite year was 2011. That year was just the peak as far as original houses, some really great scare zones too, but the houses that year were just phenomenal. There were 7 originals and only 1 IP, which doesn't happen anymore, and I wish it did because that year was just fantastic. Number 4, what was your least favorite year? I have to think about this in a little bit. I think I'm gonna go with 2012. 2012 was just kind of a disaster of a year. There were supposed to be 8 houses and one of them got scrapped because Transformers was getting built. So we only had 7 houses. One of those houses was like a last minute throw together house. They weren't planning on using the parade building. I ended up liking that house, but it was the first year of Walking Dead, and just the houses overall weren't up to the par that I'm used to with Halloween Horror Nights. And because they just added the new parade, we had the roaming hordes for scare zones, but just weren't as effective as I think we'd all hoped. So yeah, 2012. The lines were crazy because there's only 7 houses. Just didn't live up to the standards of Horror Nights. Number 5, who is your favorite icon? I want to be original and say something else other than Jack, but frankly, it's Jack. I am not ashamed to be that fan who loves Jack, but he's been the icon the majority of the years that I can remember. I didn't go to the Caretaker's year, Storyteller year. I wasn't really into Horror Nights yet. The Director's year, again, I was like a noob for Horror Nights, didn't really get that into the storyline ahead of time. And then you've got Bloody Mary and the Usher. Now Bloody Mary was awesome, her storyline was amazing, but we never see her anymore because of some weird legal issues. So it comes down to Jack. I love his personality, I love his costumes. I typically love like the funhouse, carnival, circus themes, and I like creepy clowns. I'm not afraid. Number 6, what is your favorite house? So this is kind of a tough decision And thankfully there's follow-up questions because it's hard to pick a perfect house because you have to decide, do you want the prettier house or do you want the scarier house? Because those don't always line up. So for me, my favorite is Forsaken from 2011. And it wasn't the scariest house, but I loved the theme of it. I'm really into pirates, and so it was kind of like the pirate ghost ship house. And just the scenes in that house were awesome. A really amazing courtyard. And then the finale scene on the ship, it was tilted, so you kind of had to walk sideways, and there were bad Forsaken guys popping out at you everywhere, and there's a bungee scare at the end. I loved it. It also helped that Brandon was in that house and he was in the finale scene, so I was always extra scared walking through there because I never knew what he was gonna do. It typically involves some sort of crazy Spider-Man leap flying at me and scaring me half to death. Number 7, what is your least favorite house? This is a tough one because there are some doozies of terrible houses from my stint of doing horror nights. I think it is a two-way tie, if I'm allowed that, between People Under the Stairs from 2006 and The Spawning, was that 2009? Those are both really bad. Probably People Under the Stairs was the worst though, because I just felt like, first of all, I was an HHN noob, so I didn't know better, and we waited 2 hours for that house. It was a tent house, and it was like People Under the Stairs under construction was what it was called, and it felt like I could have built it in my backyard. It probably wasn't as bad as I'm remembering it, but I had just done Psycho right before that, and this is my second ever house at Horror Nights, and just the quality going from Psycho to People Under the Stairs was such a drastic drop. It was bad. Also, honorable mention for Resident Evil for the dog on a stick. But that was just funny. People Under the Stairs was like terrible for all of the possible reasons. Not scary, terrible construction, nothing was seen. Just, I don't even remember anyone popping out and scaring me. I do not even remember what they looked like. That's how bad it was. Number 8 is what was the scariest house. So I had to think about this one for a minute because I was a really big chicken the first couple years I went to Horror Nights, and I didn't normally do haunted houses. So back then I was a lot more scared than I am now. Now I get like a little bit of like nervous excitement before I go in a house, but I'm never actually legitimately scared. It's more like a ooh scare. So I went back to my earlier years when I was a chicken, and I'm gonna go with 2007's Freddy house. I forget what it's called, but it was the Freddy Krueger house in 2007, and Sleepwalkers or something like that. It was really scary for me. We waited a good amount of time in a line, and there was a queue video, and that just built up the hype, and I was always kind of afraid of Freddy as a kid. I remember going through, and the first scene was walking to the Elm Street facade, and there was a room with like everything upside down. And then you went through like a hospital scene, and there was all these curtains you had to go through, and I pushed through a curtain, and Freddy scare actor had like just come out, and so I hit Freddy's glove with my hand as I was pushing through the curtain. Yeah, that did it. That did it for me. I was done. So done. And it wasn't like one of those cases where like it just was bad timing. My hand went through as Freddy's hand, but the fact that Freddy touched me, nope, not okay. Not okay. So that house really psychologically messed with me just because the movie scared me as a kid. So walking through scared me. So I'm looking forward to it, also kind of nervous about the Freddy vs. Jason house for this year. Number 9, what was the best IP house? This one I have to give to Cabin in the Woods. I don't typically like IP houses, but that was probably my favorite that year. I really enjoyed the movie. I like Joss Whedon a lot, so thought the movie was great. Loved the house. Thought they did an amazing job recreating the movie scenes, just the costumes, everything. And walking through the hallway with all the windows and the pretty people in the windows and the ballerina, yeah, that was scary. Number 10, most scenic house. I am really struggling with this one. I turned the camera off and thought about it for a little while because I'm really having a hard time deciding between Gothic, Dead End, and Winter's Night, because they all have merits. Gothic, that facade when you first walked in, and there were so many beautiful scenes in that house. I think that one wins just because the facade and the scene where you walked and it looked like you were above the pews, and then also the finale scene where you were walking outside. I thought all of those were great, but Dead End was amazing. There were so many little intricate details of that house. And then Winter's Night, I mean, you walked in and it was a graveyard and it was snowing. Oh, like, how do you decide between those three? But I guess if I have to pick one, it's Gothic. Number 11, what was your guilty pleasure house? I think for me, my guilty pleasure was Alice Cooper in 2012. It's by no means a good house, but I really enjoyed it because, again, Brandon was in that house, so I was going to see him quite a bit. And he was on cast A, so it was really easy to go see them like right away at the beginning of the event. So I would typically go there, and Michael was in House of Horrors, Brandon was in Alice Cooper, so I could visit both of them multiple times in a row right at the beginning of the night. And the Alice Cooper cast got to know me over time because I would come through quite a few times, and that was when I had the jock from that cast that he and I ended up becoming friends through the house, just like by a random circumstance. So I'd go to see Brandon but also go visit him. He became Horror Night's boyfriend, and we had kind of just a fun interaction with their whole cast over the course of a month. So that became my guilty pleasure house. I ended up really liking the music from that house, and while I would never put that on my favorites list, it's definitely a guilty pleasure, and I went through it the most that year, even though it was by far not the best house. Okay, so my camera battery died and I am very quickly losing light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and answer these last two house questions, and then I'm gonna save the rest of the questions for another video. So number 12, what is your favorite scene from a house? And I had to think about this one for a while, but I have a few. I can't decide. I'm gonna go with the hurricane scene from Forsaken, because it was just you walk into this open courtyard and there was wind blowing and raining, and it was just really cool. The Gothic kind of shrine scene where you walk through the hallway and there's candles all lit up, and then there would be a guy on a bungee that would fly above you. That one was amazing. And then finally, one that doesn't get a lot of love, but Dead Silence. And was that 2007? Yeah, 2007. There was a hallway where you were walking above. It was kind of the same idea as Gothic, if I remember right, where it felt like you were walking up on a catwalk, and there were like creepy ventriloquist dolls. It was really scary. I think it was the same effect as Gothic, but back then I only got to go through the houses a couple times, so I don't really remember, but it was really scary with those ventriloquist dolls. And number 13, what was your biggest letdown for a house? So I'm gonna go with 2010's Zombiegeddon. This was prior to Walking Dead, obviously, so it was prior to me really being tired of zombies, and the concept for Zombiegeddon sounded amazing. There were gonna be zombies wearing collars, and if they had a green light, it meant you were safe, or if they had a red light, that meant watch out. It might have been vice versa, I don't remember the colors. It was supposed to be basically you looked at their collars and you could tell whether or not you were gonna be safe. And so at the beginning of the house, you were safe, and then there's a power outage and oh no, zombies are all gonna get you. And it was such a cool concept. There were supposed to be like blackouts, and you were supposed to really be able to tell that the power went out. And the whole hidden thing with the power going out was it was connected to Zombie Graw, which was the scare zone outside the house. And the whole deal was that the float from Zombie Graw crashed into the building, or the power pole outside of Disaster. And that was supposed to be what made the lights flicker. And actually, when you're walking through the house about halfway through, you could hear like the Zombie Graw music, and you could hear the crash happen if you knew it was there. I did know it was there because I was already a Horror Nights uber nerd by that point, and some people that were on the forums were in the house, so they were able to explain it to us. But if you didn't know, it really wasn't conveyed that well. And to add to it, I'm pretty sure the fire marshals came through and was like, not so much on the blackouts. So the power didn't really flicker. It just wasn't as scary as it could have been. It was such a cool concept. It just didn't quite work out. Number 14, what was the biggest surprise hit for a house? And I had to think about this one for a while too, but I am going with 2007's Psycho Scariest Home for the Holidays. I was not that big into the hype of the event back then, but I remember seeing the sign for it and being like, a Christmas house? Like, what is this? But I ended up loving that house. I thought it was hysterical. We had some great interactions with scare actors in that house. In fact, the girls in front of me, there was a kitchen scene and there were 2 psychotherapy patients and they each had like body parts in their hands. The girls walked in and the scare actors trapped them in there and they wouldn't leave. So then they're just like inching towards them with the body parts going like, "Rrr," and the girls were just petrified, just like stuck against the wall. We were dying laughing. Of course, finally an ops person came and was like, come on. But it was hysterical. And I remember there was like a fence scene when you walked outside and there was a guy with like a little horn. He was like, Happy Hanukkah! Just, there was Santa with a chainsaw and it was just a great house. There was a girl with like a turkey and she was asking, she had like a turkey baster. It was just random and hysterical, and it's my first time remembering doing a humor house at Horror Nights, and the scenic and everything for it was really great. So it was a sleeper hit for me. I loved it. That is the end for the house questions. Part 2 that I'm going to film at a later time because I am all out of light. It's going to be mostly scare zones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post all 25 questions down below. So if you are a fast talker and want to go ahead and do all 25 in one video, you most certainly can. And to add on top of it, I am going to tag the Tim Tracker and Jen to do this video. Again, all 25 questions will be down below. And I hope you guys are really excited for Horror Nights, because I am. Tomorrow night, when you're watching this video, will be my first night. I'm so stoked. I can't believe it's here. Like, it just, I can't. There's no words for how excited I am for the 25th year of Horror Nights. And that means that my first Horror Nights vlog will be up on Monday. That's my end of my rambling for tonight. Again, I will film part 2 of this sometime in the future, but I'm out of light for tonight. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be back very soon with Halloween Horror Nights content. Bye guys. Alright, so this scare zone is going to be a Halloween carnival, like festival type deal where the kids are all going trick-or-treating and then a psychotherapy bus gets like released on the town. So I'm guessing they're causing some mayhem and burning down some gazebos.